Hey everyone, I'm going to show you 5 different techniques I use to create better low end for my tracks. The first tip, it's pretty simple, but a lot of people forget about it, is just combine 2 different bass sounds together. When I first started this track, I only had one synth bass from Serum. I felt like it was missing a little bit of grit, so I added a different bass that was more dirty and aggressive, and when they both combined, it created more of the sound that I was looking for. Let me play a small section of this beat just to show you. Let me show you the first bass that I selected here. So it's kind of more of a synthy square bass. The second bass that I selected is this one. Definitely more of a gritty bass. And when you combine them both together, you'll get this. Tip number 2 is don't forget to EQ your bass, especially when you combine 2 basses together. I wanted this bass to be on more the high end of the low end, if that makes sense. So the fundamental of this bass is going to be around 85 hertz, if we just take a quick listen to that. So that's going to be the square bass, essentially. And if we listen to the second bass, that's going to hover even lower than that. So let's bring up the EQ for that one. So you might not be able to hear that unless you have headphones on or a sub. But that one's hovering around 40 hertz. It's more of a sub bass. I also rolled off the high end because it was getting a little harsh up there for that grittiness, and I wanted to kind of save that for other instruments such as vocals and shakers and other percussion. So it's always good to EQ your sub basses to make sure they don't conflict with other instruments in the mix. Tip number 3 is to sidechain your kicks to your bass. There are many different ways to achieve this, but the way I prefer to do it is by using a dynamic EQ on my bass to duck out the frequencies that clash with the kick. One cool feature I like in Pro Q3 is you can select different instances of Q3 on other tracks to use as an overlay. This will allow you to see which frequencies clash more clearly. So if I click on the kick group here as our overlay, it'll show us, if we play it, where the kick lies on the frequency spectrum. You can see the dynamic EQ working. Every time it hits this frequency around 75 hertz, it ducks out these frequencies. And if we play it together with the bass, so it's a pretty simple and easy way to help your bass mesh better with the kick, but this is how I prefer to do it on pretty much all of my tracks. Tip number 4 is to combine your kicks. Now, in the same way we were combining bass sounds, you could do the same thing with kick sounds. The first kick that I found for this track was this one here, kind of like a sub kick almost. And the second kick that I found was this one. So it definitely has more punch and more of that top end click, and when you combine them together, you'll get this. In the same way that we EQ'd the bass, you're also going to need to EQ the kicks properly. So for the first kick, I believe it's more of a subby kick. So I essentially rolled off everything after 80 hertz, and if we listen to that by itself, you'll hear it. So everything after that is completely gone. Now, we did the same thing in reverse for the second kick. It's essentially backwards. If I bring up the EQ for that one, we rolled off everything around 80 hertz the opposite way. So if we listen to that, and then we combine them together, definitely has a nice punch and a nice upper end to it, as well as a slightly low end sub kick as well. So that's another simple way to deal with the low end of your kicks. Tip number 5 is to add saturation to your basses. For this example, I'm going to show you two songs that I already came out with. The latest one being Go Away, which is what I'm going to show you now. Second one being Not For You, which I also added some saturation to that bass. So let me play part of this for you real quick.
Where you going now, but you're fair.
So if we take a look at this sub bass here, play it by itself for a second. So the saturation I like to use is a plugin from FabFilter called Saturn. I usually just leave it on the default settings of whatever preset I choose. So I'll either use warm tube or warm tape, sometimes clean tube, but I usually stick with the warm options. If we take a look here, if I toggle this on and off, I'll let you hear the difference. And I'll toggle it on. So it definitely adds a little more grit and a little more bite to the sub bass, and it gives it a little more warmth as well. And I use this on almost all of my tracks. And I don't just use Saturn on basses, I also use it on other tracks such as vocals and even other instruments. The second example I'm going to show you is from a song called Not For You. It's the first song I released on my channel. This is one of those examples where the addition of saturation makes a dramatic difference. If I just play the beat for you quickly, I'll show you how it sounds. All right, so let me solo the bass for you real quick. And let me show you how it sounds without saturation. A very dramatic difference. For this one, I again used Saturn from FabFilter, but the preset I used was called Heavy Saturation. And I put up the drive quite a bit, up to 65%. I also increased the treble and presence around 10 dB, and when you combine all of that, you will get a much different sound than the original. There are, of course, a bunch of other techniques you could use when mixing your bass and your low end, such as multiband compression or regular compression, or dedicating your entire bass track to mono, which is what I did for this track. But I just wanted to give you 5 simple tips on how you can mix your low end a little better. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to check out my new song I just released this week called Go Away, as well as join the Discord if you would like to have a chat about anything that you see in these videos or if you have any other questions for me. I'll see you in the next video.